Hi, and welcome to this introduction to Safe Harbor Protocol Development. My name is Sarah Florman, and I am the Trafficking Policy Coordinator at the Minnesota Coalition Against Sexual Assault. In my role, I provide support and technical assistance to multidisciplinary teams across Minnesota who are developing their local response to sexual exploitation and trafficking. This presentation will provide some initial guidance to you and to your teams as you begin working on protocol development. After this presentation, hopefully you will be able to define systems change and describe the three phases of systems change, explain the meaning and purpose of protocol development in systems change work, and then also to advocate for protocol development in your Safe Harbor multidisciplinary teaming. Finally, I hope to start to demystify the idea of systems change and protocol development. These terms can be vague and the work is really complex, but it can be done. You do have the power to create change in your communities and improve the response to survivors of sexual exploitation and trafficking. In order to talk about protocol development, we need to first look at the larger idea of systems change. A community's response to sexual exploitation and trafficking is comprised of a web of interconnected systems, all with distinct processes and goals. Systems change work involves improving those individual systems responses, increasing the coordination between those systems, enhancing strengths of the response, addressing shortcomings such as gaps and barriers, ensuring support and engagement for victim survivors, and a continuous improvement process where you're constantly evaluating what you're doing and whether or not it's working. Protocol development is one part of the cycle of systems change. It's an attempt to streamline and simplify these connections in an effort to improve the experience for survivors. The phases of systems change. The first stop is to assess the status quo. What that means is to learn about the current response and experience of survivors in your community. In phase one, we're looking at the situation as it currently exists. What does the response process look like? How do our disciplines work together? And what are some ways we can close gaps and break down those barriers within and between the systems? Some important questions to ask during this phase include, who in the region is currently involved in the response? How well are we meeting the needs of survivors of exploitation and trafficking? What does our existing data tell us about both the problem in our community and how we're handling it? And then how victim-centered are we currently in our response? Some of the ways to assess the status quo are conducting a community needs assessment and mapping the current response. During this phase, you want to get really familiar with the agencies and organizations in your community that are providing services to survivors, as well as those that could be tapped into. The second phase is making change. During phase two, your team will analyze all the information you collected in the first phase. You want to dig deep to identify gaps and barriers in service provision, points of tension or conflict, and the quality of the overall response. It's really important to hear from survivors during this phase who have navigated these systems in your community to get a sense of what their experiences were and where improvements are needed. Some important questions to consider during phase two. What do we have agreement about in our desired response that we can put into protocol? What response patterns are we trying to encourage or to change? Do we have buy-in from leadership within these systems? What's the current knowledge about effective criminal justice and other systems responses? And how do we best prepare these interconnected systems for that change? Your team should then take all of this information and use it to develop new protocols for responding to survivors of exploitation and trafficking. Find ways to fill gaps in your response, whether that includes tapping into other service providers in your area or building relationships with providers in nearby communities. Break down barriers by working through interdisciplinary conflicts and develop new ways to collaborate. In addition to protocol development, some other strategies for making change include additional training, changes to individual practice, changes to agency policies, improving your information sharing between systems, increased collaboration overall, developing and adhering to victim-centered approaches, increasing community awareness of the issues of exploitation and trafficking, creating new programs, and adding critical partners to your systems change process. The third phase is vital to the change process. And that's also the phase that most often gets neglected. And that's to evaluate how the changes are working. Once you put new protocols into place, you're going to want to know if they're working the way they're supposed to. Does the change make the process easier for survivors? Are all the systems professionals able to respond effectively? Are there any unintended consequences to the changes that we made? You're going to want to evaluate changes, listen, learn, and reflect on the impact that those changes have made to the survivor experience. Make sure that your judgments are based on established criteria. So look back at phase 2 and remember what your original intent was when making these changes. When you look at next steps, make sure that you're making decisions based on data and evidence. And think about developing new areas to explore. Some questions you can ask are things like, to what extent are changes being followed? Are we doing what we said we would do? What difference is protocol making in the lives of survivors of exploitation and trafficking? How is it affecting folks in the system? How is it affecting offenders? To what extent are we victim-centered in the way that we've agreed to be? Are we being successful? And if so, are we being successful the way we intended? Some strategies for measuring the change are to monitor implementation to make sure that we are all doing what we said we would do, assessing some additional new developing or continuous gaps and barriers, surveys, data, observation, focus groups, interviews, collecting all of that data from survivors and participants in the protocol. Case file reviews can be another good option for looking at measuring the change, but make sure that no matter what, that you're incorporating victim survivor voices. The survivors who've been involved in these systems in your community are going to be the best people to tell you what's working and what's not. When you think of the word protocol, you might think of things like checklists, guidelines, and rule books. In concrete terms, protocol is guidelines and model practices. It's a supplement to internal policies and training for individual agencies. Protocol is a collaborative affair, and it's intended to help facilitate that collaboration. And protocol is a living document. You will never reach the end of this process. Constant changes in systems and in society are going to mean that you're going to want to be constantly looking at the protocol that you've developed to make sure that it's still effective and still the best way to respond to survivors in your community. The Sexual Violence Justice Institute at MNCASA defines protocol as the product of negotiations in which agreements are made and documented to create guidelines and assign responsibilities for participating agencies. The key pieces of that definition are negotiations and agreements, meaning that these are conversations you're going to need to have within your collaboration, and you're going to all need to agree to the decisions that are made in the protocol. If you don't agree, you're not going to do it, and then your protocol is not going to be effective. You want to document this process. You want to talk about in this document how you came to the decisions that you made. You want to make sure that this is something that new employees of different agencies, community members, and survivors can look at and understand this is what the process is supposed to look like. The protocol is a set of guidelines, but it's probably not going to be a step-by-step set of directions. It's going to simply give you the overall arc of the process. Protocol should involve really outlining responsibilities of each individual agency and part of the system, as well as the overall system's responsibility to survivors of exploitation and trafficking. And it should include all of the agencies that are involved in that response. So not just individuals from those agencies, but leadership and those agencies as a whole agreeing to these protocols. The purpose of protocol is to build bridges between the various systems involved in the response to sexual exploitation and trafficking, and to help these systems work together to provide better services and achieve more positive outcomes. For safe harbor work, protocols help us to ensure that the laws and statewide no wrong door model actually work to connect sexually exploited and trafficked youth to the services and support available. You might wonder why the local response needs to be individualized. After all, survivors of sexual exploitation and trafficking have basically the same needs across Minnesota, right? Think about the check engine light on your car. When that light goes on, it could mean a variety of things. The problem, and therefore the repairs needed, are going to be unique to each vehicle and situation. What worked for your neighbor's car might not work for yours, because your check engine lights are on for different reasons. In the same way, protocols need to be tailored because the response will need to look different in different communities. Protocols need to be community-driven and community-specific. By this, we mean developed locally by the people doing the work on the ground and by local survivors. Community-specific meaning that the response is made up of local agencies and resources, and that it's responding to the types of sexual exploitation and trafficking that are happening in your area. You want to identify the local problem. What systems and community partners are part of the local response? This might be community-based advocacy programs, public defenders, juvenile corrections or probation, juvenile prosecutors, schools, tribal governments, and the youth survivors themselves. What does demand look like in your community? Look at data on arrests and prosecutions of buyers and traffickers. Based on what you know, who is most vulnerable to sexual exploitation and trafficking, and where is it happening? Look at existing data and risk factors. Look at things like truancy numbers, runaways, youth in foster care, missing persons reports, student surveys, and population information and demographics. You really need to learn about the local problem in order to develop the local response. You want to look at the who, what, where, and how of your community. So to look at who, we're talking about what populations exist in your community. Who are the leadership of both the agencies and governments in your area? Who are the victims? Who are these at-risk youth who are being targeted for sexual exploitation and trafficking? Who are the offenders? Who's buying sex in your community and who's trafficking youth? And then systems partners. You want to look at what agencies you have available to assist in this response. What includes what resources you have available. And this can include not only different agencies, but also things like funding and community engagement. What are your needs? What are the challenges that are specific to your community? What current partnerships do different systems have with one another? And what's the current level of awareness, both among community members and among professionals who are responding to these youth? The where of your community can include things like geography, neighboring jurisdictions, things like is your community close to a state border or to an interstate highway or other areas that may be more heavily affected by trafficking and exploitation? What does the weather look like where you are? What are some of the traditions, languages, and cultural differences going on in your community? What are the beliefs and values? And how is to really look at how these systems are currently working together. When you're looking at systems change, there are 4 major targets, and those are individual practices, agency policies, systems procedures, and interagency collaboration. And for all of those targets, we want to ask these questions. What can we be doing better? Where can we reinforce our strengths? And how can we take action on our knowledge? You need to address all 4 of these targets because they are all integral parts of the protocol and systems response. When you're looking at developing protocol for the response to sexual exploitation and trafficking in your community, make sure that your multidisciplinary team includes, at minimum, the following: advocacy and service providers, child protection and child welfare, juvenile corrections and probation, healthcare professionals, law enforcement, prosecution, and schools. There are a number of other disciplines that you might want to consider, and the type of representation you have from each of these disciplines may vary depending on your community. But all of these pieces of the response are vital to the process and to the experience of survivors of exploitation and trafficking. The Safe Harbor Protocol guidelines were developed by the Ramsey County Attorney's Office and the Sexual Violence Justice Institute at the Minnesota Coalition Against Sexual Assault in a response to the legislature's request for statewide protocols for the response to sexual exploitation and trafficking. Hundreds of professionals across disciplines were gathered in various working groups to come up with guidelines for community-based protocols. It was determined really early on that there is not one protocol that will work for the entire state of Minnesota because there are so many differences regionally and within communities. So instead, the guidelines were created to help communities come up with their own specific local protocols. The Safe Harbor guidelines include a number of really key elements. There's language and terminology, so definitions of some of the normal terms that you'll hear, foundational knowledge about sexual exploitation and sex trafficking, some best practices and considerations for each discipline involved in the response, information about intergovernmental coordination with tribes, and throughout the document, survivor expertise. When you're using the Safe Harbor Protocol guidelines, the first thing that you want to remember is that they're multidisciplinary. And that means that not just one chapter applies to each discipline. So you're going to want to read about all the areas that relate to what you do and your work. You're also going to want to learn about areas that you don't commonly relate to, because those are sometimes where the intersections and tensions exist. And when you're working with survivors of exploitation and trafficking, it's sometimes really helpful to understand the parts of the system that you don't touch, so that when you're working with them, you can better help prepare them for what to expect. The Safe Harbor Protocol guidelines are centered around 5 core principles. And those are that protocols must be victim-centered, trauma-informed, culturally responsive, youth-centered, and strengths-based. Being victim-centered means that our protocols are focused on the experience and the needs of the young person that we're working with, of the survivor of exploitation and trafficking. We're focused on improving their experience, not necessarily focused on our individual goals or making our own jobs easier. Trauma-informed means to understand that these youth have been through a variety of complex situations, and that that behaviors and other factors have been informed by the trauma that they've experienced. Your protocols need to be culturally responsive. So when you look at your local community, you really want to make sure that you've got resources available and you're considering how to provide those resources for youth with various cultural identities. Make sure that your protocols are youth-centered. So remember that Safe Harbor is primarily focused on youth 24 and under. And so ensure that the protocols that you're creating work for that age group. And then finally, look at your protocols and make sure that they're based in strengths. One of the biggest hurdles that we go through when working with youth is a sense of hopelessness and sometimes fatigue with systems involvement. A lot of these youth are tired of this. They don't want to be here. And they've been told in a variety of situations throughout their lives that there are things wrong with them, that they have problems, that their families aren't succeeding, that they aren't succeeding. So when you're writing these protocols, consider looking at these youth and focusing on what's going well for them. What strengths and resiliency do they bring to the table? What have they done to survive this long? What are some of the positive outcomes of the behaviors that they've had to engage in? When you really focus on strengths, you get a lot better buy-in from the youth that you're working with and a lot better results. So, talking about protocol development, we can organize that into 3 P's: purpose, process, and product. Start with purpose. What is your mission? Why are you doing this? Does everyone on your team have the same understanding of what this protocol will mean? Your purpose is going to impact your process and your product, so you really want to be clear from the beginning so that you can mitigate later frustrations. Teams who have differing ideas within about the purpose of your protocol will find 6 months or a year into the process that you're working in parallel lines and that you are not coming up with a cohesive product. When you're talking about Safe Harbor protocol, make sure that when you're considering purpose, you're considering the need to be victim-centered, trauma-informed, culturally responsive, youth-centered, and strengths-based. The general process for protocol development looks like this. You start with assessing the status quo. You determine what is our current response, what does that look like, how does it work, what's working, what's not. Your team then develops core messages. So you think, what is our mission? What are we trying to improve? What are our goals with this protocol development? You want to identify the key elements of response. So make sure that you have all the people at the table that are really vital to this response to survivors of exploitation and trafficking. You want to plan the writing process. And then you want to make sure that you've got engagement and buy-in from all of your team members and leadership, as well as any special populations, specifically survivors of exploitation and trafficking in your community. There's a number of approaches that you can use when you're talking about developing protocol. You can create work groups for discipline areas. So all of your team members who are in law enforcement can work together on the law enforcement portion of the protocol. All of your child protection workers can work on that section, etc. You could also have a single writer who's taking input from others. You could do a group writing process and an editor who organizes the information. It's really valuable to do a multidisciplinary review process so that each discipline and each specific section is being reviewed and vetted by the whole team to make sure that not only do they understand each discipline's process and procedures, but that they work together. We want to do internal reviews. So again, making sure that all of the people on the team are providing feedback to all of the other people on the team. That's how we make these systems work together. Another hugely important piece, and I cannot say this enough, is survivor input. You want to have youth at the table who have been involved in exploitation and trafficking. You want to get their opinion on what protocols you're writing, how they think they're going to work, and what they think is needed. Like a marathon, protocol writing can seem really big and daunting. So it helps to break it into smaller and more manageable tasks. Set and keep deadlines. Be ambitious, but also be realistic. Most of you have full-time jobs on top of involvement in protocol development. Setbacks might happen, but keep moving forward and take the little wins where you can. You want to consider developing timelines around the process, including things like first and second drafts, presenting drafts and providing feedback, review and editing. And don't forget to build in breaks and understand that there are maybe times of year or other situations that might arise that might cause team members to be more or less engaged at various points in the process. You want to consider planning. Make sure that these goals are manageable. Make sure that deadlines are realistic. And then make sure that there's a system of accountability in place so that everybody is doing their part and all the work doesn't fall on one person. Another key area to think about when developing protocol are tension points. And with Safe Harbor, there are a number of tension points that you've probably experienced in your work already. Some of the common ones include questions of placement, mandated reporting, youth privacy rights, multi-jurisdictional issues, the inclusion of survivor voices, various cultural considerations, and the overall idea of harm reduction, which can boil down to the difference between a public health approach and a public safety approach. All of these tensions are normal, and all of these tensions are an inherent part of this process because all of the disciplines working on these teams have a slightly different goal in mind. There are going to be disagreements about what the best outcome should be. For example, law enforcement, their primary goal will be to investigate and identify an offender. Prosecution's goal is going to be to successfully prosecute that offender. Child protection's goal might be ensuring immediate safety and placement of the youth. And an advocate or service provider might be concerned about the youth's overall preferences and voice in the process. All of these different disciplines are going to have their conflicts, and that's very normal. But these tension points are really the key to successful protocol development. They tend to be the places where the response breaks down and where survivors get lost in the shuffle. Your team is going to have to commit to working through these issues. The sooner the better. It's really common for teams to avoid or postpone these conversations because it's uncomfortable. We don't like to have these disagreements. These are the times when our professions, which don't always work and play well together, are not always on the same page. These conversations are uncomfortable. But if we don't resolve these tensions, you're going to end up with a protocol that doesn't work for anyone. Finally, what is your product? What do you want the final product to look like? How is it going to be used and by whom? What formats are going to work best for your team and community? Like protocol itself, there is no one-size-fits-all solution, and you might want to have multiple options. This can include things like an online PDF with hyperlinks, pocket-sized versions, larger handbooks, or even an app. Ultimately, your product needs to be practical. It needs to be purposeful. It needs to be easy to use by the folks on the ground who need to be implementing these protocols. And it needs to be flexible so that these protocols will be applicable to all situations of exploitation and trafficking. When it comes to organizing your protocol, there are a number of different ways to do this. The two most common are to organize by discipline or by response requirements. So when you're organizing a protocol by discipline, the basic outline will look like this. Philosophy. So why are we here? What is our mission? What is the purpose of this protocol? Core discipline model practices. So there would be a section on each specific discipline going through their overall practices and their response. Then you'd want to include additional considerations, relevant statutes, cultural considerations, and key terms and definitions. When you're organizing your protocol by response requirements, you want to have those introductory pieces of the mission and history of the team, etc. Then you're going to want to focus on the required elements for a strong response. So this can include sections on initial disclosures, cultural responsiveness, accessibility, and other considerations for all disciplines. Then smaller discipline-specific considerations and tools. You'll also then maybe want to include relevant statutes and key terms and definitions. However you organize your protocols, you want to ensure that you include the core values and mission of the team, and then make sure that the protocol document is cross-referenced and emphasizes the intersections of different disciplines. You might also want to consider adding other relevant information like definitions or a local resource directory. Protocol implementation requires developing and renewing interagency agreements. So when you began your protocol process, your multidisciplinary team may have come to some agreements about how each agency would respond and implement the protocol. You want to make sure that all of those are still in place. You also want to consider distribution. Who gets copies? How are those accessible? Make sure that everyone who might need one has access. You also need to consider training, and that will be both intra and interdisciplinary. So how is each agency going to take this document back and train all of their employees? Another thing you want to do is make sure that you've informed the community. This is something that is intended to help survivors of exploitation and trafficking to navigate something that is often really scary and daunting. If you can let the community know, hey, we as a system are working together to try to make this process better, here's what we're doing, that can really build trust with community members. You also want to have an accountability system in place for implementation to ensure that every agency and every individual within those agencies is following the protocol that they've agreed to. It's really important to remember that systems change is a process. And as with systems change as a whole, protocol development requires multiple steps. Once you've implemented your protocols, you're going to need to measure the change. And then, because society and systems are always changing, you will need to keep going through the cycle. This is an iterative and ongoing process. Protocol development is a really big and complicated task. It's hard work, but extremely important work. It's really normal to feel overwhelmed at the thought of starting this project, and there's no perfect formula for how to achieve it. But it is doable. Communities across Minnesota are working on their local response to sexual exploitation and trafficking, and you can make this happen in your community. Some initial steps to get started include doing a community needs assessment, finding out what do we have in our community, what's the problem, what gaps exist. Map the current response. What are we currently doing? These assessing the status quo pieces help you to get a baseline for protocol development. Here's what we have so far. What do we need to work on? You want to do a readiness assessment with your multidisciplinary team. As team members and agencies involved in this agreement, are we ready to begin this process? Are we ready to develop and implement protocols around safe harbor? What do we need in order to make sure that we are ready? You need to get some buy-in from stakeholders. So this will include participating agencies and leadership in those agencies, as well as other folks, whether it be systems folks, government, or community members. You want to have people on board with this process and understand why it's important and valuable. And then you want to review the Safe Harbor Protocol guidelines. There is a lot of information in this book that will help you when you're looking to develop your community-specific response. Coming soon, the Safe Harbor Protocol Development Guidebook will be published in June of 2019. And this document is a combination training manual and template, providing some ideas on how to write protocol, what important elements to include, and organization ideas. This product is adaptable and customizable. There's going to be printed and digital versions available. This is a guidebook that's ideally meant to be used as needed for each community. Take what you need, lose the rest. For more information, support, and assistance, go to www.mincasa.org or contact me directly. I'm here to support you and to provide resources to make this process easier. Thank you.